What's up, guys? All right, let's get going. Let's get going. All right. So, what's the next thing we gotta do? All right. So this one is going to be basically this video is going to be basically about creating your structure and creating your architecture. Okay. So the architecture is very important in a application. It's basically what sets up your layout of your website, like what's going to be where, basically, right? And now it's important to kind of remain consistent with the industry, and the reason why is because if you want someone to kind of like come into your office one day and take over the job from someone who got fired or left to another company, whatever, you want to make sure that that person is going to sit down and kind of understand where things are. So that's why it's kind of a good idea to remain consistent with architectures and stuff like that. However, it's up to you. It's your own flavor. You put things whatever they want, whatever you want them, and you can name them whatever you want to name them. But it depends on whether you want to make it easy for the next person, or do you just want to like make it harder for the next person for being the next person. But this is the way I like to set up things. So remember how I set up a Firebase here, Firebase folder with all the Firebase stuff in it. So that's part of the architecture that I like. Now the source folder, this is where everything that all the files and all the components and everything that you're going to need to create your site is going to be inside there. Okay. And eventually you're going to have a dist folder, which is going to be where your distribution files are going to be when you build this and get ready to send it to your hosting company. We haven't got there yet, but you're eventually going to see that, and it's going to get created, not automatically, but you're going to create it with a piece of code that is going to automatically build it, create the folder, build everything inside. All right, so inside the folder, what are we going to need? We need an assets folder. That's fine. Inside this asset folder, you're going to have images, I don't know, media files, fonts, whatever, things like that, right? The physical stuff. I don't know why I call it physical. Everything is digital. It's not physical. All right. What else we're gonna need? So next thing I like to do is in here is I like to create a new folder, and it's gonna go components. Components. Okay. So what's gonna go inside the components folder? So if we go back into the site, where did I put that thing? Oh, there it is. All right. If we go back into the site here, we're gonna need a header right here, right? So this is a header or a nav bar, and then underneath the nav, and then inside the nav bar you have an icon, you have a menu item, and you have a button, action button. Then you have a slider, you have some cards, info cards, you have a heading with some information, some countdowns, blah 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 blah. Each one of these sections is basically a component. And then eventually you have down here, you have a footer. But at the very least, you're going to need a header, a piece of content, and a footer, right? So what we're going to do is each one of these right here is going to be the home for all of these components once we start creating them, okay? But we'll get there in a second. The next thing you're going to need is going to be you can call it components, you can call it utils, but it's going to be in the SRC. And it's going to be another folder, of course. Yeah, like I said, you can call it context, or you can call it utils, or what else have I seen? Helpers. You can call it that. You can call it includes. There's so many different ways for this. I'm gonna call it utils because it's basically utility functions and things. Well, you know what? These are not utility functions. These are these are kind of like utility functions. I'm thinking ahead of what I'm gonna need. That's why. But you're always gonna need one anyway. Just create one. Okay. Then you're definitely gonna need layouts. Okay. All right, and the layouts is going to make sense eventually, but the layouts, what they do basically is you can create there the primary design of what your site will look like. And most websites, they have one or two, at least two, maybe, well, at least one, but most commonly two. One which includes this that you see: header, content, footer, right? Maybe a sidebar, blah blah blah. And the other one, it could be a headless, like one that doesn't have a header, doesn't include the menu, doesn't include the footer. It's just flat, full screen, the whole thing. And those are mainly for unsecure pages that people who are not logged in. And let's say, for example, the menu and all this stuff is only available to people who are logged in. If they're only available to people who are logged in, then this shouldn't be a layout that shows up to someone who haven't logged in yet. So you have to have two layouts: one for the people who haven't logged in, who don't have access to anything, and one for the people who are already logged in, which will include all of this stuff. So we have a layout right now, a layout folder, and eventually we'll create the layout inside. And then the last one that I like to add is the routes. And you can call it routes, you can call it views, you can call it pages, you can call it anything you want. I like to call it routes because in the realm of React, we don't really use pages, we use views or routes, because that's how you paginate through different pages, by routing to these pages. Because technically it's all one single page that makes it the illusion that you're using different pages, but it's just basically all one page. Alright, and that is, if I recall correctly, everything we're gonna need. We still have this app.js, which is fine because this is our main entry. We're gonna mess around with this in a little bit. And we have this one, which is our the way that our app comes in through for JavaScripting. Okay, so before we move along, I do want to make some changes on this, and I'm going to take the restrict mode off, and I won't need React anymore, but I will need React DOM client, because that's in here. React DOM, what is it? Oh, right here. Okay, and we're gonna need the app.js, which is eventually you're gonna see it later, but basically what's being injected in here. And then the index.js CSS, which we messed around with it already, and here it is. I'm gonna close that for now. So this file, what it does is it tells JavaScript that this is the root of the folder. This is the entry of the folder. So main.js is what it gets read at the HTML level inside the index.html. When this one loads up, it loads this file. It loads this file into the browser. The browser reads this and says, oh, okay, go read the main.js. When it gets to the main.js is telling them, hey, welcome. We're gonna be using your DOM, and we have a page here, a file here, that's going to be where all of my stuff is being shown. Hit save. And then now when we get in there, which is this one, that's when the application starts to show in here. So we're gonna start working around next on this section right here by creating a couple of pages and creating the routes so that we can route between these two pages. All right, we'll do that next. Have a good one.